Hello, everyone. Welcome. We're so excited to see everyone joining us from all over the country. We have New York, we have DC, we have California, Palo Alto, well, in California. We have somebody from Hawaii. Hi, Julie. That's awesome. Virginia. This is awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're super excited to have you here. This is really closing the Hispanic Heritage Month. As you all probably know, it goes from September 15 to October 15. So this is the closing of this full month where we get to celebrate all Latin America and the independence of these countries. And we are so excited to have amazing guests today joining me for Cafecito. I'm talking about what it means to be a Latinx in the workplace and how can we ensure that we are promoting leadership and we are bringing along people um, for the decision making table. And so we're super excited to have Sara Lomelin Velten join us today. She is the CEO of Philanthropy Together, and also Lorenzo Olvera, Director of the U.S. Senate Diversity Initiative under Senator Schumer's office. So we are very excited to have them here, and you probably saw some of their bio already in the intro here. But why is it important to be coming together celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month? And what does it mean to be a Latino in the US? And well, first of all, I want to say, as you probably know, BUILD is here. Our mission is to ignite the power of youth in under resourced communities and help them achieve career success, build their entrepreneurial mindset, and access opportunities. And this is really critical as Latinos, as we know, and with communities of color, because these are things that we don't necessarily have access immediately when we're born or we're immigrating to the U.S. And being able to make those connections, having access to these resources, really can set you up for the career success that we are looking for. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. It is important that we see ourselves as agents of change in our communities and in our society, and that we bring all who we are and all the richness of our culture into the table to make our nation a better one. So, some very interesting statistics here are that the Latino population in the US currently makes 18.7% of our nation's population. This really makes us roughly 51% of the nation's population growth because we are the largest growing minority, according to the latest census. And the bad part of that is that we only represent 3% of the board seats on the Fortune 1000 companies. This is really, really bad, something that we need to change. And we only represent 5% of the nonprofit board seats as well. So, not only in the corporate setting, but also in the nonprofit, we are not at the decision making table yet. Um, so only 4.3% of the executive positions are held by Latinx leaders right now. And so this is something that we need to change. And we want to talk about what really is influencing all this statistic. What can we do as a whole, as a body, as a group to help change these numbers and make them equal and give us a space at the table. So again, I want to welcome Sara Lomelin Velten, Executive Director of Philanthropy Together today. So hi, Sara, welcome. There she comes.
Hola, Thais. So
Well,
good to be here with you.
thank you. And then I'm gonna invite also and welcome Lorenzo Olvera. He is again the director of the U.S. Senate Diversity Initiative for under Senator Schumer's office. So, hi, Lorenzo.
Hey, how are you? Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us. And it is so good to be in Cafecito with both of you.
Mhm.
I think I have the pleasure of knowing Sarah for many, many years now, and we have walked together our professional lives in California. And now I get to know Lorenzo and all his accomplishments and everything that he's been able to do for the cause, for bringing Latinos onto the table. And so, what is the biggest impact on your career? What really had brought you to this success? I'm going to start with you, Lorenzo.
I appreciate it. And that's a hefty question. And I've been thinking a lot about it. If you asked me when I was, younger about in high school, my answer would probably be different than what it was, when I was in
Mm.
my, 20s. So let me take a stab at least at when I was in high school. And I think honestly, the biggest impact on just the definition of success, of happiness, really came from my parents and mentors, right? I'm originally from Caldwell, Idaho. And for the most of our folks, they probably don't know where that might be, but it's a very small rural town. My parents are Mexican immigrants, right? And so for them, providing their first generation child the opportunities to to be successful, to go on and do bigger and better things, really started from that kind of mentality. And so, as cliche as it is to say, right, I really am standing on the shoulders of a lot of folks who kind of really looked into, like, here's this short little Latino from Caldwell, Idaho. Let's give them an opportunity. And if it weren't for them, right, if it weren't for not just my parents but for mentors, for organizations like the Congressional Hispanic Caucus Institute that brought me from Idaho to DC, if it really weren't for them, I wouldn't be where I am today. But now, as a more, I guess, established professional, if you will, I think the biggest thing that I've learned is just the idea of just being happy, being really happy with your career, and how other aspects and decisions that you make can really affect that ultimate happiness. And so I'm constantly, as I'm working through my career and as I help folks with maybe theirs, I'm constantly having that, those dichotomies of how do you mesh those things together. There's such an underappreciation, I feel like, at least in my personal experience, about the importance of just being happy with with your career. But let me stop there and turn it over to our colleague.
Thank you, Lorenzo. Actually, Sarah, I have similar but a little tweak question for you because I think you and I had the experience of immigrating as young adults to a new country with a completely different culture, right, than the one that we grew up in. And trying to find a way in our professional lives and building it from zero again when we migrated presented different challenges. So, can you talk a little bit about what were those challenges and what was critical for you to really overcome those and move on to the career clearly success that you have achieved?
Thank you, Thais. Well, I think, first of all, the biggest challenge for me was I moved to the US when I was 25 years old. And I never learned, I was not in a school in Mexico City that was teaching English, right? So I knew a little bit of English here and there, but nothing to be able to, to have a career or to take on, a graduate degree or anything like that. And I feel that, piggybacking what Lorenzo said, um, I stand on the shoulders of my parents. Both of them are big in education, and also both of them are entrepreneurs. So my three siblings and I have all this, I don't know, we are risk takers, right? And at some point when I moved to the US, I said, if I'm going to do something here, I need to learn the language, first of all, right? So I remember taking a course about English as a second language for business. And I had a really hard time. I have never, studied as much in my life as when I was, 25 years old, taking a graduate degree in another language. So I was reading a lot, studying a lot, and I just needed to get out of my head, like, okay, you are going to make 10,000 grammatical errors, and that's okay. Like, instead of being self-conscious, I was like, okay, can people understand me? I think they can, let's just do it. Also, as you said, coming to a country where the culture is different, where you don't feel like you can navigate as comfortable as you can in your own country, your own language, it's hard. And it's hard also when sometimes you have this whole negative voice behind you saying you are not good enough. People are looking at you like you don't speak the language well, like your vocabulary is not rich enough. And I think is that challenge is as much as internal as is it external, even more internal. And I think what I need to say here is like, you just need to get rid of that internal challenge and said, I can do it. I'm here, I'm good enough, I'm doing it.
That's awesome. That's really, really good. So what part of your heritage throughout these years of creating your career and your cultural heritage, what are you bringing to the table every day that you feel like this is who I am and I want everyone to see it, and what is the benefit to that you perceive for others as you bring that to the table? And I'll start now with you, Lorenzo.
Sure. Well, in my job, right, as the director of the Senate Diversity Initiative, our mission, is to increase diversity, inclusion, and equity among Senate Democratic offices. I mean, our job is literally to have folks who look like you and I, right, to be here in the halls of Congress, so that they are in fact they themselves, right? Because it's a perspective that let's just be honest, has been missing for quite a long time. And when you think about what the United States Senate does, like literally the concept of representation, improving and addressing some of our country's biggest issues, developing policy, what better place or is it more needed for folks to really be themselves? And so for me, my pathway, right, honestly, because of my Latina, heritage, it was through these programs like the Congressional Hispanic Caucus Institute that selected a Latino from Caldwell, Idaho, to get them to DC. Where did I end up working for? Well, I ended up working for a Latino member of Congress who's now our Secretary of Health and Human Services, Javier Becerra, right? And I say that because my Latino community, now not just them, but a lot of other, and a lot of other communities, but specifically my Latino community has really been helping me throughout my career. And so now that we focus a little bit more on the broader sense of diversity, it's something that still stays with me, which is why I think, the mission of BUILD and everyone that's participating here is such a powerful organization and an important concept, because when folks are themselves, when they're bringing their true selves to the table, you'll see how important it is to the conversation, right? And to addressing some of the most important solutions or problems, addressing our in this instance, our country. I mean, think about what we're talking about in the United States Senate today. We're talking about climate. We're talking about economics. We're talking about a pandemic. We're talking about a huge infrastructure piece of legislation, right? We need diversity representation at that staff level. We need people to be themselves so that they're providing a sense of perspective, right? A different idea or different approaches to really inform policy addressing these challenges. And for me, right, I found my pathway, or at least a pathway, right, through the Latino community. And so I'm a huge fan of organizations like BUILD, like the Congressional Hispanic Caucus Institute. There's a lot of other organizations out there that are literally providing the resources, right, the money, the time, the development of folks like me in different parts of the community and bring them into spaces as important as the United States Congress.
That's awesome.
Thais, if I can
Sarah.
add to what
Yes.
Lorenzo said, I think, Lorenzo, you touched on something that it's extremely important, and is how we need to understand that our diversity is our advantage. If we don't bring our full selves to the table, if we dilute our identities, the conversation is not as rich.
Yes.
This country is a country that is made up of this diversity, amazing diversity of people. We need all of us, you know, Latinx, Asian Americans, Blacks. I mean, we need all of us to come with our full identity, because we make those tables richer and the conversation richer.
I mean, there's literally data that's I mean, I mean, I couldn't agree with you more, but you know, United States senators, members of Congress, their jobs are to be representative. Sure. I mean, I get that concept, but their jobs are also to be responsive and to be responsible. And so you think about things that have been impacting certain communities, right? And not just Latinos, but I mean, you know, our African-American brothers and sisters, our Asian community, the LGBTQ community. I mean, the staff or the offices that had the best representation tend to be the most responsive and be more responsible in implementing those policies. And so, you know, we probably won't get into this idea of tokenism and anything like that, because there are different perspectives. Even the three of us may identify as Latinx, but even between the three of us, we are different. But the piece is that, like you said, Sarah, it's so important. There's an advantage, right, to organizations, to offices, when that representation is in fact there. And to the audience members, like, there are people, literally, there are organizations, offices around the United States that literally want to help you get to these places, because there is a powerful return on investment. So
that is awesome. And I think it leads to the next question that I had is, we know that the numbers are not where they should be. And we also, to Lorenzo's point and Sarah's, we know that diversity really enriches any group that we belong to or that we are part of. So how do we change this statistics? How do we bring along other leaders? And in looking at solutions, I would love for you to also speak, what were the critical elements for your career success? Yes, we stand on the shoulders of our parents, but there were along the way many instances in which, if we are true to ourselves, we see in the hand of somebody pulling us up, right? And helping us get to where we are today. So can we name some of those, and what can we do as a whole, as a community, to start pulling others alongside ourselves so that we can increase those numbers?
I think paying it forward, right? No one is successful by yourself. As you said, we are the product, and our success is the product of a village, right?
Yes.
And we as Latino community need to bring along younger leaders. And not only younger leaders, it's like, you know, leaders in general. I think it's time for us to also, you know, roll up our sleeves and take action in a lot of things that we can control. I think there is many things that we cannot control, but as Lorenzo said, right, like, there are many organizations that are waiting for people like you to come and do this. And when you get to that point, make sure that you are bringing someone with you. You know, for me, as you know, Thais, my Latino Community Foundation family has been an incredible, and continues to be an incredible, influence in my life. I'm happy to say that, you know, some of my most important mentors in my career are 10 years younger than me. Because sometimes, you know, people tend to think like, oh, a mentor, you know, it's someone that it's 20 years older and, you know, it's opening doors. No, guess what? My biggest mentor is 10 years younger than me. And that woman continues to inspire me and push me and challenge me. And I think that's another thing that we need to do, is like, again, get out of our heads and take all those internal barriers and challenge ourselves more, and know that we can do it. I don't know if I mean, for sure, because we're talking about BUILD, the statistics about, Latinx entrepreneurs, right? During the big recession, the only group of entrepreneurs that didn't stop or didn't went down were those businesses led by Latinas. And that talks about the resilience that we have. Someone in the chat put, yes, our Latino entrepreneurs, yes, immigrants, we get things done. And I think, that is, for me, is the biggest lesson.
And I couldn't agree with you more, honestly. Thank God, for people who are willing to pay it forward. I mean, literally every single thing, that I've either accomplished, whatever you want to define that as, or these accolades, whether it be going to DC, going to the White House, going into the Senate, having a family. I mean, literally, it was because a lot of other folks have really, helped me out. And so there's, as a Catholic, don't judge me here, right? But I mean, as a Catholic, my mom's really, really religious, but there's very few things that are more that are better than just helping another individual out. And now, as as our communities grow, we have a lot of lessons that have been learned. We have a lot of folks that have been trailblazers in different spaces, whether it be in academia, in the private sector, and of course in the federal government or in government at large, that since now that we have those lessons learned, now we need to be a little bit more strategic, right, and intentional on how do we really address these issues and have, and finding solutions. And so at least here in the United States Senate, what we realize is like our path to diversify more junior level, positions, right, are going to be completely different than trying to get individuals in these more senior level positions. And as leaders of change, as people trying to change culture, you have to be mindful of where are those similarities, but what are the differences, right? Because I don't know about the entire audience, but I can imagine that there are a lot of people, a lot of Idahoans, I'm going to pick on Idaho because that's where I'm from, right, that really just don't even know that working on Capitol Hill is even a thing. But even the ones that do know that it's a thing, right? What are the issues that are keeping them from coming to places like DC? Well, first and foremost, it's probably money, right? It's probably being able to afford it in a place like DC. Now, when you're thinking about how do we get people into these real policy positions that have close access to United States senators, that's a completely different conversation. Now there's people way more powerful, way more senior than I am, right, that are having similar conversations. How do we actually diversify the United States Senate? And we've seen that in the last couple of elections. Take a look at the last election that we have, and how much the diversity of U.S. senators increased, both in gender and in race and ethnicity. It's a very powerful transformation that we're seeing. And I can guarantee you, right, within the next couple of years, the numbers are going to continue to grow and grow. The United States is just going into that direction. But how, as we thought leaders, how can we be very intentional, right? Learn from our leaders, learn from the trailblazers, right? And being very intentional and having a plan to help kind of solve these different times. It's this exciting space to be in. And for, again, I say to the folks that are participating, like, I hope this excites you, because every sector wants you. Every sector at different levels will want to, because that's just how the direction in which the United States is as a whole, is going.
And Lorenzo, I'm going to even make it easier for folks, because you're telling people like getting to Capitol Hill is easy. I'm going to make it even easier, right? Like, how, if you are sitting at your home and saying, okay, how do I start doing this? Or how do I start to be more civically engaged? Just start, participating in your local community.
Yes.
Like, look at your neighborhood, look at those local nonprofits. Like, I can assure you that there are many grassroots nonprofits in your community that need someone like you, someone that has, many skills and strengths like you. Um, how many small organizations are, have gaps in funding? Can you help them, fundraise? Can you help advocate for them? Can you elevate their messaging by following them on social media? Like I'm in philanthropy, on the other side of politics, but it's like, for me, philanthropy is going back to the roots of love of humanity. We are all lovers of humans, right? Therefore, we're all philanthropists. How can we take control and take action to support our communities? That will engage you more and more and more into your community. And then you join the board of a nonprofit that you are supporting. And then you join, a commission, and then you run for office.
Yeah, building. I think that's really critical to both of your points. Being able to start building. And as I was thinking right now on, sometimes we are afraid of starting in the entry job level and see it like, oh, I'm never going to get to the other side. But the reality is you can. And it's all about having that entrepreneurial mindset and having that initiative, right? Like starting to see the gaps and filling them, being able to see yourself as the person that is bridging those gaps for whoever you're working with. And that gives you that visibility as a person, and your contributions become very meaningful, and that starts building up also your career. So to both of your points, we can start wherever we are at and start building from there, going up. So in this sense, I also want to know a little bit of how have you reacted when challenges come your way, when somebody's judging you precisely because you are a Latina person. um, how do you overcome those challenges?
I can start.
Yeah.
It took me years, and I hope that the young people that are listening to us right now, it doesn't take you years. If I can save you all those years. When I first moved to the US, I became Sarah. For many years, I was Sarah. Why? Because when I was telling people my name, they were having a hard time pronouncing it. And it's Sara. I mean, it's not, it's Sara,
Is
but
that
I would
Thais?
say Sara. No one was able to pronounce it. So at some point I was like, Sarah. And for many years I was Sarah. And then at some point I said, not anymore. I'm Sara. And if it takes you, 10,000 times to repeat my name, to say it right, well, you have to do it. Because it takes me a lot of time to pronounce other people's names in different languages, and I make the effort. And I think it's also that is feeling that own your voice, own your whole, bring your whole self every time you are there. A good friend of mine said, like, when you are joining a job or an organization or a company, don't try to fit in. You bring your whole you, because that is why they hired you. Don't dilute yourself.
So it's actually really interesting that you bring up the story about your name, because I actually had a very similar experience. Actually, a good portion of people in Idaho back home know me as Larry, right? Because Lorenzo is Lawrence in English, and then Larry is just short for Lawrence. Now, I don't want to get into the nitty gritty here, but let's just say it wasn't necessarily by choice, meaning my family didn't make the choice. However, as immigrants, whether right or wrong, my parents did allow it. They did allow the school district to call me Larry Olvera because they really wanted us to fit in. They didn't want us, they didn't want let's just call it the heritage to kind of hold this back. Now, again, I don't necessarily agree with what they're doing, but I can at least appreciate what they were trying to, what they were trying to do. And like Sara, like I had that kind of aha moment when I got into college, and I realized well, first of all, I really don't look like a Larry, right? Let's just be honest with you. But I made a more conscious effort to go by my real name, like Lorenzo. And people would ask me, why are you going by Lorenzo? Well, first of all, it's because it's my name. You should be asking why I went by Larry for the longest time. But it's a really important question when you talk about identity, right? And how easy it is for individuals in certain communities to really get the pressure to assimilate according to the actual culture, which is kind of counter to the richness of diversity, of being who you are. And so I make more of an effort now, and now everybody in DC knows me as Lorenzo, and they laugh when I tell them that story. They're like, you went by Larry for 20 years of your life? And I'm like, yeah. And I share that piece. But for the most part, I've been very, very fortunate in the sense that, I grew up in the 90s, the last couple centuries with my career. And so my identity has actually been pretty, or my heritage has been one in which people have actually really, really appreciated, right? And spaces like Congress, spaces like, I worked in the Obama administration for about 6 years, they actually really, really wanted that because they knew that these perspectives, right, were ones in which we were trying to increase. And so, being from Idaho, having that experience with my name, being, a Latino, in this instance, straight man, right, was an important perspective that was missing. But I guess the lesson learned, what I would teach my son, who is biracial, who honestly looks nothing like me. He looks more like his mom, and his mom is red hair and freckles. And so, but I made it a point to call him Sebastian, and I make sure that he has the accent over the A, because I really want him to remember, that, his side, there's a part of his side that are very, very Mexicanos, that are, that are this piece. He may not look like it, but it really is important not to forget, as cliche as it says, right? Not forget who you are, right? Like I have a picture, I always in my office, I have a picture here of my mom, my grandma and I in Mexico, right? And I have pictures over there to kind of remind me of, like, who I am. Don't get the collar shirt and the books twisted. There's still a piece of me that will never that will never change. And I hope that my son, and I hope everybody else really appreciates that and never lets that go, because that's the thing that you really are bringing to the table. It's the representation, the whole reason why we're having this conversation, right?
I played now my accent to my advantage. I'm never going to get rid of my accent. It's here to stay. It is what it is. And now I play it to my advantage, because people maybe have to listen to me more carefully. So it's like, okay, I have your attention now. You're going to listen to me. So, yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. There's some questions actually that we are getting from the audience that I would love to ask you. One of them is, how do you overcome the limiting belief of feeling less prepared or less deserving of high-level positions in the U.S. because you are a Latino or you're Latino upbringing?
So I'll defer to you, if you like.
How do we overcome the limiting? Again, who is saying that to you? I feel that a lot of times is these little voice here. And I'm so inspired by organizations like BUILD, and for many organizations that are, leadership development organizations that are everywhere in the country, that will tell you who is saying that we are less prepared, who is saying that we don't deserve this. Like, let's change that narrative. Look at the many, many Latinos that are extremely well prepared and are successful. Yes, we don't have the numbers yet. And I think this is something that we need to remember, yet. And it's in all of us to change that, and to bring more people along with us, and to invest in younger leaders. and to keep bringing more of our people and our communities in all those leadership development programs, and just like change that whole narrative. And it happens in philanthropy, it happens in education, it happens everywhere, that people from the very, when Latinos are in elementary school, they're already telling us, oh, because English is your second language, you cannot be in the high level math class. What? So let's be all advocates for that.
Yeah.
And as yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, Sarah.
No,
I
go
think
ahead.
that's critical. I think being able to speak for yourself, like really stand up to biases that we come into place or that will come into place when we are interacting with others, is really important. Self advocacy is something that we really need to work with our community, because we tend to, if somebody stops us, we tend to say, well, I tried. And you just did it once. No, we need to come back and say, I'm sorry, no. I was trying to do this, and I think we need to go. I want you to hear it. And if you're going to say no, give me a reason. Give me the facts. Give me the truths behind it, so that we can really address that, but not just say, no, you can't. And sometimes we, as a community, and maybe it's cultural, we tend to, if we receive a no, feel like, oh, it was a no, and just turn around and move on. And maybe it is that retraining in our in pieces of our culture that really need to be addressed. Lorenzo, do you have anything to say?
Well, one thing I would quickly add is that it sounds, like part of the question has to deal with like imposter syndrome. And
yes.
Look, being again a Latino from Idaho and being in spaces where, I definitely didn't look like me, and there were people that went to much fancier colleges than I did, and they just seemed much more intelligent than me. I mean, the imposter syndrome is real. It really is. But to Sara's point is that a lot of it was really just in my head, right? The decisions, the resources, the things that were given to me, much more about other things than it is about my personal ability, right? And what I'm bringing to the table. So it took me some time to, kind of appreciate that piece. Now, look, I'll be the first to admit I'm not the smartest person, right? It probably does take me a little bit longer to comprehend certain things, but I am a strong worker, right? I am a hard worker. I am going to, if things take me a little bit longer, I'm going to invest the time. So I have to be good at time management. But what I've learned over the time, right, for my career is, if anything, I'm a capable learner, right? And that's the piece that I've learned to appreciate. And so, look, I can't be the director forever here. There's going to be other things that I'm having to do. I imagine I'm going to have similar issues of dealing with imposter syndrome, but I'm going to remember the things that I was able to accomplish. I'm going to remember what it means to have to learn, right? Or to manage my time, accordingly. And more than anything else, I'm going to remember, or I'm going to know that there are a lot of people that have already done it, right? That have already been there. And so we don't necessarily always have to reinvent the wheel, but we probably will have to reinvent our way of getting there. And remember, there are a lot of other people around here, right, that are willing to help. I mean, literally, I'm very fortunate that I'm married and my wife puts up with me, but she's a great sounding board, right? She helps me when I'm struggling about certain things. And English is my second language, and I have to ask her all the time about looking up a word here and this, and I'm using it incorrectly when I'm doing some of these different conversations. But you rely on all of these different concepts, kind of thing. But I'll admit, the imposter syndrome is there, and it's just nice reminders again of the things that you can accomplish when you really just are able to kind of put the noise away for a minute and really just focus on what it takes for you to kind of get to where you need to go.
And Lorenzo, and also, you mentioned something really important, like you ask your wife for help. I think, something that is super important for us to learn is how to ask for help. We need to ask for help. We cannot do everything ourselves. And as an entrepreneur, as a student, as a professional, you need to be also humble enough to say, I need help. Right? Like I learned this the hard way. I was an entrepreneur for some years, and right now I feel that I can write a book of all the things that you cannot do when you run a business. And a lot of the learnings are, if I had just asked for help when I needed it. And we see that is very ingrained in our culture, because we think like, okay, if I ask for help, people are going to look at me like I'm not good enough, like, oh my God, I'm a failure. And no, we just need to see like asking for help is just how we get to the next level, right? Like we have to climb the mountain. If we don't ask for help, it's going to take us 3 years. If we're asking for help, it doesn't mean that the mountain is going to suddenly become flat, but maybe somebody's going to put a little motor behind us and we'll go faster. So asking for help, I think it's super important.
Absolutely. It is really important. So I have a last question for you, the incredible guest today. So how do we expand definitions of leadership, and how we understand leadership, by key decision makers? So many of whom are white or male. So aspiring leaders from diverse cultures become decision makers themselves. So how do we expand in this concept? And we kind of touch a little bit on it, but what really that means, and how can we expand that definition? What is leadership? Does leadership mean that I need to be the CEO of an organization? Does it mean that I need to be the senator? Like, what does leadership really mean? And how do we expand it so that we can start building momentum for our people?
Yeah. And Sara, go ahead if you please.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to add, like, for me, diversity, inclusion, equity, increasing representation in the United States Senate is much more about the concepts of leadership than it really is about the DEI, concepts and best practices. And what I mean by this is what you really are talking about is changing culture, right? You're getting people to change their behaviors. You're getting people to change their hearts and minds. And those are really concepts of leadership. And so here in the Senate, people understanding, people's motivations or seeing where they're at is half the battle. And so where I'm going with this is like, certain offices may be all about diversity, inclusion, equity because their state is very, very diverse, whereas someone else coming from a less diverse state, their motivations for diversifying might be different, but the approaches that they take will both be principles of leadership. And so what we do, working with, Thais, you mentioned that a lot of them look like old white men, and that's very true, unfortunately. Or fortunately, but what we've learned is that we have a lot of allies. We really do. There are folks that understand that the United States of, the last couple of decades, the Senate, isn't the same as it is right now. And so we depend on these people of power, of influence, people who can get, change policy or change behaviors, hold people accountable, to really be allies in helping us, create this change to achieve these goals. But even as individuals, right? Even though like senators and hiring managers, they hold the power, you still depend on organizations like BUILD, organizations like mine, and definitely aspiring Senate staffers, the leaders, right, of today, right, and tomorrow, to really raise their hand and say, you know what, I want to serve. That's a position of leadership. You're deciding to say, hey, I want to be a public servant, right? And so it's a very powerful question. And I think if anyone really wants to talk about, when you're talking about entrepreneurship, when you're talking about diversity, inclusion, equity, when you're talking about public service, you really are learning the foundations of leadership. And so actually, after deciding where I was going to go to, get my graduate degree, I thought I was going to do a lot of different things. I actually ended up getting my degree in leadership. because literally this is how I've seen when it comes to this, like human capital, it's actually, how do I get people to change their behaviors? How do I get them to behind a vision, right? How do I create change, or how do we create changing culture? It's through concepts of leadership, but it's not always just the top. It really is, you know, the people who are watching this video or that are participating. I need you to be leaders, right? I need you all to raise your hand and say, you know what, I want to serve, or I want to join, you know, nonprofits and serve the community. There's plenty of room, and there's definitely a lot of need, right? We opened it up with the statistics. We're definitely not as where we need to be, and there's a lot of work needed to be done. And so I hope folks can appreciate, and I hope they're at least somewhat excited about that, at least that there is space, right? And so this is really where I'd like to just close with. This is an invitation. My information is pretty public, and I'm happy to share my email with anybody. And I'm willing to chat with anybody if they're really thinking, really serious about wanting to serve on Capitol Hill. And if you want to have a conversation about the administration, we could talk a little bit about that. But I'm no longer in this administration. I was in the Obama administration. But I'd love to have a conversation with you, because we need more folks. We absolutely do, at every single level. And again, just to kind of reframe, going back to the question, I guarantee you that our conversations, our pathways, our approaches, you know, will be based on concepts of leadership.
Yeah, and I know we're running out of time, but I'll just something really quickly. I love, Lorenzo, that you're saying, you know, as Thais said too, like leadership doesn't have to be at the top, right? A leader for me is someone, is not the person that manages people, is the person that inspires people. And you can inspire others at every single level and where you are. If you work in a big company, if you work in a little company, in a nonprofit, in a school, in whatever you are, you can inspire people and be a leader. And how do you expand those leadership positions or leadership definitions? Is taking space. Someone very wise, another young mentor of mine, they are a mentor of mine, and they are, you know, 20 years younger than me, is take the space that you need. So how do you create those spaces? By creating them yourselves, by inspiring other people to come with you to create those spaces and to expand those definitions. So again, it's like, we need to stop waiting for people to come and save us or give us the solution. We, each of us, needs to take action and take that first step.
Absolutely.
Well, I've been inspired by you too, and I'm so honored to know you both and know the work that you are doing at different levels in your positions, in your personal life, and by giving your time today to join this conversation and help us move the needle further, so that we can change those numbers and those statistics. So thank you so much, both Lorenzo, Sara, for all you do, for your time, for your leadership. You definitely are inspiring, and we are so happy to have you in our circle of family friends. And I hope this is the first of many other conversations that we have together. And thank you, absolutely, everyone that joined us today. I hope that this was insightful, that it was inspiring, and let's come together for more cafecitos and changing our communities and getting in the leadership position. So let's go inspire somebody today. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Thais.
Thank you. Have a wonderful afternoon, everyone, and to more cafecitos.
Absolutely. Adios.